Hello everybody, it's me, and you're probably asking yourself, what the hell is this video? And well, you see, I have this big pile of dinosaur books. Many of them from my childhood, many of them with a lot of nostalgic value to me. And I randomly just had the idea of what if I make a video series where I just look at some of them and just reminisce about the past. You know, go on a little nostalgic tour through the books that influenced me, that made me, and probably also a bunch of you readers, because I bet many of you had the same books as I did. So this video is completely experimental. I have nothing scripted. My idea was just to go through this page by page and comment on anything interesting that we will see. And like I said, it's all experimental, so I'm sorry if the lighting is off, or I'm also sorry about the sound quality. I'm just directly using the phone and the camera's microphone, because really I don't have any good microphones. You probably noticed that from the podcast I have with Memo. So yeah, before we begin, a little context. So what is this book? This is Eyewitness Dinosaur, which it's in German. It's a German version because I'm from Switzerland, but it won't matter that much because we will mostly look at the pictures. But yeah, Eyewitness, many of you probably recognize that logo or maybe that name, because this was a very popular series of science books during the 90s and 2000s. I think they're still going. Are they still making new books? I don't know. So yeah, this was such a popular series of non-fiction books that it even got its own documentary show. And just for this video I actually went through some old crates in the basement where we had our old VHS tapes, and there I found these. I also found this there. Should probably burn it. Yeah, these are the episodes on apes and cats. I also had one about elephants, but I haven't found it again, even though that was the one I watched the most. And yeah, I always liked watching these tapes, and the intro is iconic. You probably have all seen it at some point, or if I play the intro in this video, if I can, maybe it will get copyright strike if I do, but if I can, you will immediately recognize it, I bet. And yeah, I always liked watching these, and sad to say, I never actually watched the Dinosaur episode when I was a kid. But I knew there was a Dinosaur episode because they always advertised it in the credits. But I never found it. I always went to the electronics store with my father to look for it, but instead they only had tapes about dogs and cats and other bullshit animals. What? I want to watch the dinosaur one. That was always one of the most frustrating parts about my childhood.
Say yes to VHS.
And can you imagine the catharsis factor when I found out that last year or so that the Eyewitness company has its own YouTube channel where they uploaded all of these original episodes for free to watch. Man, that made me so happy. But yeah, so I didn't have the VHS tape, but I had the book. So this, I believe, it originally came out in the 80s. You probably all know the blog Love in the Time of Cosmosaurs. And in one fairly recent post, they actually looked at the original version from 1989, and what I have here is a more recent reprint from, I believe, the 2000s. And you notice it because some of this stuff is more updated than in that older version. So yeah, what were these Eyewitness books about? You see it all in the presentation. It's that's is like the whole style of these books, that you have like a blank white background and like these very beautiful photographs laid on top, as if it's actually lying on your table. And that was, at the time when these came out, was such a unique way of presenting stuff, because it was like you have a museum in book form. And yeah, I always just loved this. They don't make many books like this anymore, now that I think about it. So let's look at the first page here. What were dinosaurs? There's no worse way you could open this, I guess, than with an iguana, which is not a dinosaur at all. The tuatara also isn't a dinosaur. And mayonnaise is also not an instrument, Patrick. Yeah, but I think the point was, yeah, they say here in the text there, they put an iguana there to make like the connection to Iguanodon, one of the first discovered dinosaurs. And also to say like dinosaurs were probably scaly like most reptiles. Oh, how innocent they were back in the day. I recognize some of the images here. Like this is from a Dougal Dixon book, I remember. What was it called? Like the photographic guide to prehistory, where they create like these dioramas and photograph them to like pretend that they actually went back in time to take photos of dinosaurs. I actually don't own that book, but I've seen it online a lot. And here you see like the classic progression from like Tecodon to early dinosaur. Yeah, with like Eparcharia and Ornithosuchus. And wait a sec. This one actually looks very familiar. Wait a second. Well, I'll be damned. They actually copied this image from here, from John C. McLaughlin. That's, I think, the same Ornithosuchus. Very funny. Yeah, what makes this even funnier is that today we know that this reptile was not actually a dinosaur, but more closely related to crocodiles. And it evolved like bipedalism completely independently of dinosaurs. Kind of funny story there. Yeah, that's for another episode. So, let's see what's on the next page. Oh yeah, like the early history of dinosaurs, with the old Mantel and Owen story. Of course, the Crystal Palace reconstructions. I was there last year, by the way. You can read about that on my blog. Oh, this is nice. Like a focus on the plant life that was around during the Mesozoic. You don't see that often in books like this. I really like that. Horsetails. For my job, I recently had to write like a whole ass document all about fun facts about horsetails, because, you know, there's like recent speculation they were like the favorite food of baby dinosaurs. And of course I'm helping design a dinosaur exhibit, so go figure. Riesen und Zwerge, so giants and dwarfs, so this is about like dinosaur sizes. Here, Compsognathus, yeah. For the longest time, the smallest known non-avian dinosaur, but I think they have found some that were even smaller, like I think Scansoriopteryx was even smaller than that, and in Korea I think they found like footprints of like dromaeosaurs, tiny dromaeosaurs about the size of like sparrows. Imagine holding that in your hand. So now we come to my favorite part that I remember. You see, I work for a zoological museum, and next year we will have a very big new dinosaur exhibit where we will get original Diplodocus bones, like an original Diplodocus skeleton that we will mount in full size. And for the exhibit, I actually got, like, for the labels or for like the information that we will present, I actually was inspired by this part of the book, because you see, starts out with the head and neck, then here the legs and the body, then the tail, and then the tail tip. And this is such a great way of illustrating just how gigantic this animal really was. And yeah, and in the museum we will have like these like electronic desks with like touch screens and stuff, and like at each section of the dinosaur there will be like a desk like that for like each section of the body. So you will have like a picture of like the tail tip, and you can tap on that and you will get like information about like what do we know how Diplodocus used its tail, or what do we know about like how Diplodocus used its feet and such. Yeah, and it's gonna be great. We'll probably be around next year when that is finished. Oh wow, that's actually a really cool image. Now that I look at it, I think that's also from this Dougal Dixon book with the photos. And like the pillar connection and the bridge connection, yeah, they did that a lot in books like this, because I mean it is an apt comparison when you look at like the dorsal spines. And yeah, of course, like the idea that Diplodocus could like rear up on its tail. There is like some controversy over whether it really did that. In my opinion, I think it probably did that fairly regularly. Because, well, you can see here these characteristic hemel arches, I think is the name of this bone, and they have like this very distinctive double bridge design, which, well, that's where the name Diplodocus comes from, double bridge. And of course, like, what were those arches used for? Like, back in the day when they thought sauropods dragged the tail, they thought that this was maybe just to support the underside of the tail while dragging it. But of course, now that we know that they held the tail high up in the air when walking, well, what could they then have been used for? Of course, I think it makes the most sense if it really did that, with that regularly. Like, well, yeah, a kangaroo. That's a very good comparison in a way. Well done, book. Anyway, let's move on. And yeah, let's continue on to the next page. And yeah, look at this. Like, that's what's always great about these books, that they print the specimens so large that you can like just examine every little detail at your own leisure. Here, I think this is like a cast of the skull of the original Dippy Mount. You know, the big skeleton that used to be at the NHM, and now I think it's like going on world tours and such. And the funny thing about Dippy's skull is it's not actually from a Diplodocus. It later turned out that the skull actually belonged to Galeamopus, and there was like this survey from 2015, I think, by Job et al., where they concluded that we actually don't have any Diplodocid skull that can be confidently assigned to Diplodocus. So we don't for certain know what Diplodocus' head actually looked like. Isn't that funny? Look here, there's also a little historic drawing, probably like Victorian era stuff. Yeah, that's the thing about the Eyewitness books, that they used a lot of like, also documentaries, that they used a lot of stock footage and such, and like older drawings instead of original things, which you can criticize, I think, but I mean, these things are still nice to look at, I think. So it's nice that it's included. So, oh, nice. Yeah, see, that's what I mean here. The old, what was his name? Something. I think Eduard Rieu is the artist of that. Yeah. And this looks like one of Marsh's old sketches. Oh, that's a lion tooth. That's funny. Is this like Is this like a original size? I mean, that's kind of the point in these books sometimes, that it's supposed to give you like an idea of the size, and it doesn't really say. Wasn't that like a popular toy once by Invicta? Huh. Oh, here you see some original drawings. They look like they were copied from John Sibbick, which that's a book for a whole other episode. The Illustrated Encyclopedia of Dinosaurs by David Norman. Oh yeah, by the way, I completely forgot to comment on that. Yeah, this was written by David Norman too, and Angela Milner. Yeah, plant eaters. Yeah, you get like a very good view of like these bizarre tooth structure of these hadrosaurs. Oh, and this is great too. Like you get to see a Parasaurolophus skull in full detail. Like you can see like every little detail. It's so nice. I am so convinced that this part of the skull was filled up by some sort of skin, like some sort of cheek tissue, because that would look so awkward if it didn't. Oh look, little Charles Knight there too. This bit, I think it's a bit dangerous to show like the skull of Psittacosaurus directly compared with a parrot without showing what Psittacosaurus would have looked like. I don't think there is actually a reconstruction of it in this book. Oh look, Triceratops. I've seen this guy too somewhere. I've seen it, but I don't know anymore which. Like I think that's like one of those like museum models that they had at the NHM. Dinosaur skin and armor. Oh, not that interesting. Now look, the famous first stegosaur by Auguste Jobin, I think was his name. Like that was a funny story. Like I made obviously a post on my blog about the history of Stegosaurus reconstructions, and this was always like attributed to a certain A. Tobin, because I thought it was originally published in the Scientific American, and there they actually took it from an earlier French publication and miscredited the artist. And only later, when this year I think Eric Buffetot released a new paper on this drawing about the history of it, and that's when I learned that this was actually from a French artist called Jobin, not Tobin. Yeah, anyway. Tuojiangosaurus. That's so nice. Yeah, you see. Yeah, I didn't even comment on this. Yeah, that's how you see this book's age at like this like classic stegosaur reconstruction where they go full like half circle, and really the tail would have probably just stuck out like this. Yeah, look, I've seen this model in person at the NHM when I was there last year. They had it in like a little vitrine. Yeah, the dinosaur exhibit at the Natural History Museum of London, that's a whole different story. Like, I've been to London twice in my life. Both times I visited the museum. There's like a 10-year gap between those two visits, and the dinosaur exhibit literally hasn't changed at all, which is a bit concerning if you ask me, because it's, even when I was there the first time in like 2012 maybe, it was already stuck a bit in the 90s. Yeah, that model was there too. I didn't even... I'm a bit stupid sometimes. How did I not even notice that guy? Yeah. It's a very interesting, like very reptilian reconstruction of an ornithomimid, whereas today, of course, we know that these were like fully feathered animals. But from like a style perspective, it's very interesting how reptilian they managed to make it, despite it obviously being so bird-like. Oh look, that's also from the Dougal Dixon book again. That too, that is also from that book. Yeah, like the iguanodon hands. Yeah, that's another fun part of it. Like you can literally just do this and compare. Dolo's classic iguanodon, where they had to like disarticulate the tail to get it into that position. Man, people were a bit crazy back then. Is that the from the Smith book from like 1891, I think? Could be. Dinosaur footprint. Oh god. Yeah, like yeah, people back then had a lot of trouble imagining feathered dinosaurs. So like instead of making them basically birds with a few extra features, they took the old reptilian designs and just like plucked feathers on them, and it looked so goofy. And I think reconstructions like this are the reason why there's so many people today that have like an aversion to the idea of feathered dinosaurs, because artists back then just did a really bad job at imagining these. Like today, the feather reconstructions look so much more plausible, if you ask me. And of course here, classic Charles Knight, the leaping Lelaps. Oh look, a Therizinosaur, that's also nice. Dinosaur X. I wonder if this is again meant to be like original 1:1 size. It doesn't say again. I mean, yeah, I mean that's a Wachtel eye, so that's Wachtel is a quail in German. Sorry. Egg of an unknown, and this is an oviraptor egg. So yeah, a quail egg is about this size. So I guess this is meant to be original size. Interesting. And here a little. Yeah, that's actually a better reconstruction of a feathered oviraptor, if you ask me. Good old Protoceratops, our favorite. Our favorite egg layer. This is from that one British artist. What was his name again? He made like that humpbacked Megalosaurus too. Neve Parker. That was his name. Yeah, like I think he did a lot of work for the NHM back in the day. I don't know where that drawing is from. Looks interesting. And here again, like a classic Victorian era drawing. Dinosaur Knochenbruch, interesting. Oh, that's interesting. Like they show a dinosaur fossil with like bone cancer. Huh. Okay, that's pretty unique that they show like osteopathologies in a book like this. Nice. Here, dinosaur or bird. Yeah, they still treat it here as a bit of an open question if birds really descend from dinosaurs, because yeah, I guess there were like still like people like Alan Feduccia and other no, I shouldn't curse in a video like this, I'm sorry. But other like researchers advocating for the old thecodont hypothesis that birds don't descend from dinosaurs, the similarities are just convergent. But I think it's by this time that this edition of this book came out, it was already undeniable that it is funny that they use Trilophysis in this chapter, because it's a very early Triassic dinosaur, so not really that closely related to birds, but I guess does kind of get the point across at how birdy dinosaurs already were throughout their history. And there was like this. It becomes a bit more relevant nowadays, I guess, because there was this one study by Scott Hartman that, and other people, so like I can't remember all the names, but they calculated that based on like the body mass and such and the volume, that if Xylophysis had like the same metabolism as like an emu or an ostrich, it would have needed a feather coat. Otherwise, it would have frozen to death in like the cold Triassic desert nights. So I guess it could have been already very bird-like animal. Interesting to think about. Oh, this is cool! Like all the different tools that the. Hey, I don't think I've ever seen a hammer like that. Wow! Even I'm still learning stuff from these books. What is missile called in English? I can't remember. But I have some of these. I think I've seen this model at the NHM. Oh look, what Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins' workshop in New York when he was working on the Paleozoic Museum before it was destroyed. Oh, this is also pretty cool, like how they do make like 3D models. But why do they use Scutosaurus? It's called digital dinosaurs, and then they use an animal that's not a dinosaur. One day, and oh look, this is like different prehistoric animals. Macetognathus, so that's like an early cynodont. Riochasuchus, an early crocodilian, not crocodilian, like pseudosuchian, like the Ictodon. We all love that guy. So I guess this is like about like animals that lived before or like during the Triassic. That's interesting. Did I skip a page? No. Dryosaurus. Oh yeah. Crocodile. Yeah, these are like Jurassic. Oh, okay, so they're just going through time, I guess. And are these camels? Yeah, that's a human skull. Homo erectus. Yeah, he has the same eyebrow ridges as I do. And dinosaur myths. Yeah, it used to be thought that Hypsilophodon and such could like walk on trees, and they lived like tree kangaroos, but I think that was based on a misinterpretation of the feet. Like they thought that it had like an opposable digit on the foot, like a perching bird, so that it could grab onto branches, but that turned out to not be the case. But it is possible actually that some other ornithischians could climb trees. There was this heterodontosaur called the money dance, where they are fairly certain that it actually did have a grasping foot. Now look, that's from the movie 1 million BC from like the 1920s or 30s, I think. Like most people are more familiar with the remake from the 60s, because that one had all the Ray Harryhausen stop motion effects. The big Brontosaurus hoax? Is that how you would translate Schwindel? Yeah, I guess. Here they repeat like the idea that the Brontosaurus is not valid anymore because they use the Camarasaurus skull in the original reconstruction. But that's not really the history behind it. It's more simple that it was later just recognized that the Brontosaurus bones are just not distinctive enough to be their own genus. Until like 2015, when they found that it does warrant its own distinctive status. So that's why we can still talk about Brontosaurus as its own thing. That's great. And here, of course, like the old story about like dragon bones being dinosaur bones in China. Like they did like a survey once of what most of these like dragon bones in like Chinese medicine markets actually are, and most of them, it turned out, are actually like clams and like Pleistocene horses, or I think in one case even like Homo erectus teeth. So yeah, there's like very little correlation between like what the Chinese call dragon bones and actual dinosaur fossils. So there probably is not a good, they probably were not an inspiration for that. And well, I guess that concludes Eyewitness Dinosaur. I hope you enjoyed this experiment of mine. Maybe, I mean, I have so many books that we could talk about that probably many of you still own. Like right here, I have here Was ist was, Dinosaur, which is like Eyewitness was like the British version of these types of books. And Was ist was is the German version, basically, by the German Tesloff Verlag, and it's designed a little differently, but for me these two books were kind of the same in my mind space. And yeah, it would be fun to talk about this one in a future episode, or also the McLaughlin one I showed there, and I don't know, there's so many things I could talk about. Of course, if you have a recommendation for a book I could talk about, just write it in the comments. Maybe I actually have it in my collection, or maybe I can find it somewhere online. And well, that was it. I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.